We are getting ready to get started here with our webinar today. We have Tyler Jeffcoat from Seller Accountant. He's been on the Extras podcast for the past several weeks, talking everything from basic accounting to kind of figuring out what you want to essentially do with your life. What do you want to do? What do you want to make out of your business? And today he's going to be talking with us about selling and getting an e-commerce business ready to sell. Do you want to just take a quick moment and thank our sponsors? Our sponsors, Cabbage. You hear them every week on the podcast. We're really grateful to them, but we're also really grateful for what they do because it's not easy for small business owners to get funding. And oftentimes as an online e-commerce seller, one of the biggest things that holds you back is funding. So one of the great things, if you are a keyword listener, you can sign up with them and see if you qualify for funding. If you do, you can get a Visa gift card up to $100. And you sign up on Cabbage with a K, KABBAGE.com/Amazon Insider, I think /keyword also will work too. We're going to turn time over to Jeff in just a moment, but just a couple things to be aware of. First of all, we will be recording this and sharing it later. So yay. So those of you who are listening after the fact, thank you. We missed you here live, but thank you for listening. Thank you for registering. We really appreciate that. Second thing, we have our lovely chat option over here. And on the chat, feel free to please post any questions that you have. I'm going to be monitoring the chat the whole time. So any sort of questions that you post, I'll make sure to make a note of them. And then after the fact, we are going to have a nice long Q&A session when we are all done with the webinar with Tyler. So I just want to check to make sure. I think Tyler's here. Tyler, just want to say hello to you. Hello? Maybe not. Just give me one moment here. Let's see. Hang on. All right, just checking to make sure he is able to join us. So yes, we are getting started. We'll be starting, well, we're started. We're just waiting, making sure that Tyler is joining us. He looks like he might have a couple technical difficulties. I hope you guys have learned something from him. He's an interesting, I've gotten to know him obviously a lot better than you guys have because I've spent a lot of time chatting with him over the past month or so. And it's pretty amazing. You know, he took a business, built it from nothing, and then was able to sell it. And now he started a second business. This Seller Accountant is the name of the company. And Seller Accountant, they do everything from managing your books from the very beginning. So you're starting a business, they get a good process set up, or maybe you have started and you're not sure if you like your process or not when it comes to accounting. They make sure that the process is going well. Another thing that they do is they go in and they make sure that everything is in line so that if you are interested in selling your business, everything's going to be very easy to send to a buyer. Everything's going to look clean. It's going to be easy to read. So they kind of do this full service. And Seller Accountant, it was started by Tyler Jeffcoat, who we're going to be talking with, and Brandon Checketts. And if that name sounds familiar to you, it's because Brandon Checketts, he is one of the founders of Seller Labs. So heavy Amazon background. He's been a big Amazon player for many years now. So two people that are very, very knowledgeable are running Seller Accountant. And so they have a good idea of what they're doing. And especially with, your Amazon business, there's so many different things that you've got to be aware of when it comes to your accounting, everything from sales tax to managing every single little fee that Amazon is charging. Sometimes there are sellers that they'll start going through and really fine tuning and looking at some of the stuff that they're selling and the fees that they're assessing. And they're paying Amazon to sell some of their items. So those are all the kind of things that Tyler and the team over at Stellar Accountant do. And Tyler, I think I just saw you pop up. Hey, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. It's good to be here. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
That's okay. It happens. So, and I was just saying, I will be monitoring all questions in the chat. We'll be doing question and answers with you later. Your slides, it looks like they should be there. If you go to slides, you should be able to hit preview and see that. Just checking. And I see lots of good questions already popping up. So thank you guys so much. And again, I'm going to be making a note of that the whole time. And what I'll do is when I've saved your question, I'll send you a response that says, hey, got your question. If you don't get that, type the question again and just be like, hey, Kate, what's going on? Make sure you got my question. So
Kate,
Tyler.
Slides, it's wanting me to upload them, and I think you had them on your end. So I'll go ahead and do an introduction, guys. I'm sorry. I think I'm probably the one missing the technology side of this. But hi, hopefully I'm a better accountant than I am an IT guy. So yeah, my name is Tyler Jeffcoat, and very excited to get to talk to you guys today. For any of you who may have listened to the podcast over the past few weeks, thank you for spending that time with us, and thank you again today. I mean, I think for me at least, I only have a certain number of, call it tickets or tokens or minutes each week where I can listen to new content, and the fact that you would spend this time with me, I'm just grateful for it. So thank you for letting me have your time. And the great thing is that the first couple of slides are, an alternative bald photo of myself. So yeah, I don't have to show you guys that. Just a little bit of my background. Kate was just mentioning it, but I am an accountant by trade. My graduate school focus was on finance, and I was a banker for a few years, and then I had the privilege of building a healthcare company, and was one of the co-founders, was along for the ride the whole time from 0 to a little over 100 employees in 4 years, and I had the opportunity last year to exit that business, and really thankful for that opportunity. And then, as Kate said, Brandon Checketts has become a good friend of mine, and we decided to join forces and create Stellar Accountant. And so I think where I'm coming from is really, wanting to make sure that we're planning our businesses as if we're going to sell them, even if you're not going to, even if you don't think you're going to exit anytime soon. The fact that you have a clear plan is going to get you a lot farther. And so I'm going to pause here for a second and quick check in. Kate, are you able to get those slides up?
So I think it maybe froze. Okay. So we might have to just do share screen. I apologize for that, but I don't know. I don't know about that. So
that's okay. No worries.
There you go. Okay. Awesome. And thank you for the questions. Keep sending questions. We're already getting some good stuff.
All right. And so unfortunately, I think you guys are going to be getting the version of the slides here that aren't in presentation form, but hopefully everyone can see this. All right, Kate, can you see me?
I can. Yes, It's a great photo.
Oh, thank you. Yes, one that only a few people would love. But okay, so there's me. So let me get on to the next slide here. Forgive the subtitle stuff in the back, but I want to make sure that we're honoring your time. I've recently published a book called Solving the Cash Flow Crisis, and I just wanted to let you guys know that as a free gift for joining us today, we're just going to email a copy of this out to everyone who has registered for the webinar. So nothing you have to do about that. We're just going to send you a book. I think that this book, you'll find it really helpful for a couple of reasons. If you are ever in a position where you think you might need to raise capital for your business, and you don't really know where to start, this would be a great book to start. And so, yes, at the end, we really do get into the practical, how should you assess different lending options versus bringing on a business partner. But at the beginning, it's a lot of how do you prepare to raise capital? So how do you assess your business model, and how do you practically improve your cash flow? So I hope you guys enjoy the book. We will email that to you here in the next couple of days. But let me just go ahead and dive right into the webinar. So we are really going to talk about these 5 things today. So the last 2 are extremely practical. We're literally going to walk you through a tool for how to appraise your Amazon business right now. And then we're going to talk about some, really practical tips and tricks for increasing the value of your business. And so bear with me a few minutes, because understanding where you are as an entrepreneur and what your goals are, and then kind of understanding how in general you can value these kinds of businesses is the only way that we can really understand, kind of place it in the right setting. So just to start by talking about your goals, let's go to the next one here. All right. So, forgive the sarcasm here, but the reality is if I don't have clear goals, if I don't know what I want my end game in this business to look like, I'm pretty hopeless when it comes to implementing a strategy. What should I do for the next 12 months? And, think about it. I'm here just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And if I know that I want to go on vacation, but I am not, sure exactly where I want to go, as long as I at least know the trajectory of my vacation, meaning I want to go to the beach or I want to go to the mountains, I've got to pick one or the other. Because if anyone's ever been to Atlanta, you know that heading anywhere south and east out of the city will put you in front of literally 100 beautiful beaches. But if you're trying to go to the mountains, you shouldn't head southeast out of Atlanta. And likewise, if you want to go to the beach, heading north or west out of Atlanta is a really bad idea. And so having some kind of a vision, I think this is $100 million brand. That's a great goal. Or I want to live on the beach and have an autopilot business that'll generate a lot of cash for me. And just knowing generally where you want your business to head is critical as an entrepreneur. So I'm going to recommend a couple of books to you. This first one, if you haven't read Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, it's a pretty good read, and I'm stealing this figure from him, so I wanted to give him a shout out. But most of us as entrepreneurs, and I was guilty of this in my former business, we operate out of this whirlwind mentality where we go from one crisis to another, and we are not always very in tune with what our vision is. We're not very cognizant of what our goals are. And so as you can kind of see from this point A figure, if we didn't know where our vision was, we would be tempted to go in whatever direction was the easiest at this given moment. This would be, should I launch a new brand or should I not? Should I embark on a new channel expansion? Should I look at going overseas? The answers to those questions are, I don't really know, unless you know where you want to head. And the answers to them strategically change dramatically if you're going to, say, try to reach 8 figures as a brand versus you want to exit in 24 months and that kind of thing. And so I think Mike's point here in this figure is whatever the easiest path is going to seem like the best path unless you really know what your vision is. And so my encouragement to us, and I'm starting my second business here too, so my encouragement to us as business owners is to stop long enough to get outside of the whirlwind and start viewing our business like these guys would ask us to. And if you get nothing else out of this webinar, if you have not read Traction by Gino Wickman, I highly recommend stop what you're doing, buy it. It's such a good $15 purchase that if you hate it, email me. I promise you I'll buy the copy from you. But this book transformed my life as an entrepreneur because it helped me get on top of my business and understand. I've always loved the E-Myth, right? We love Gerber's book about viewing your business from on top of it instead of within it. But I struggled with Gerber's book because I didn't have enough practical insights in that book to actually execute the plan. And so with Traction, it literally helps you build your operating system. How do I set a vision? How do I hire the right people? How do I solve issues? How do I build processes? That kind of thing. So highly recommend Traction. Also highly recommend the 4 Disciplines of Execution. That book's a little bit more focused on how do you set better goals as a company and how do you hold your team accountable. So if you had to kind of order them, I think if you're looking for a broader operating system for your business, I would recommend reading Traction first. If you're looking for how to really dial in your scorecard or create accountability in your team, I might lean towards 4 Disciplines of Execution, but I definitely recommend buying both of these books. They're outstanding. And so where are you as an entrepreneur? I mean, are you totally burned out? Do you have a goal of a certain amount of cash? Do you want to have an exit that is 2 million or 5 million? Are you the opposite? Are you running out of cash and feeling desperate? Are you that classic entrepreneur that has a different entrepreneurial seizure every other day and you're looking to get out of this brand so that you can start something more exciting? Did you just learn that your kids don't want your business and you need to find a new exit strategy for the business? Or is it time to get out of a partnership? These are just questions to ask yourself to try to figure out. Like, actually, in the last 2 weeks, I've literally talked to sellers. One seller who says, I don't ever want to sell my business. I am making money. I have a streamlined operation. Why in the world would I mess with this deal? I met with another couple of owners who have already decided we're going to build this thing to pass on to our children. And then I literally have talked to 3 or 4 sellers who can't wait to sell. Please prepare my books so that I can exit this brand as soon as possible. And the reason I bring this up is, again, your tactical strategy going forward changes dramatically based on, for instance, look at that last bullet point. Are you able to stick around for 6 months to help with the transition? Or are you so desperate to get out that you just want the quickest ticket to get off this bus, that kind of thing? And so just know yourself, know who you are as an entrepreneur, know where your heart is, frankly, how much energy do you have left for this business, and know that will impact your exit strategy greatly. So let's pause for a second. And before we talk about actual appraisal, now's the moment where you and I need to be really, really honest about the actual state of our business. Let's assume this isn't your business. Let's assume it's someone that you don't even particularly like that much, right? And your job is to assess the quality of some really important aspects of this business. Here they are. How would you grade yourself on these 4 bullet points? The first one is with regards to your operations. How many minutes, how many hours every week does it take you to run your business? How solid are your procurement processes and your ability to work with your vendors, that kind of thing? How do you deal with customer service issues? All the operational things that, Amazon makes them a little bit easier, but there's still a ton of logistics that go into running an e-commerce business, especially if you're multi-channel. From a marketing standpoint, how good are you at acquiring new customers? Are you the kind of business that can launch a new product and drive traffic to that product efficiently? How is your marketing, right? Financially, do you have decent books? I mean, if you were to honestly assess your business, could you tell me pretty quickly how profitable you are, how your ACoS is impacting your bottom line, what the difference between your storage fees and your long-term storage fees or your other fulfillment costs are? Really having a handle on your numbers and actually managing those numbers instead of just letting them happen is critical to driving value for your business. And then finally, legal. I'm really thinking about things like IP. If you're in a partnership, do you have an operating agreement? Are you paying the taxes you're supposed to be paying, that kind of thing? How tight is your back office in terms of you being able to manage your business well? Hi, Kate.
Hey, I just wanted to let you know I made a poll real quick. So
cool.
If people want to go in and let us know kind of where their strength is, they can do that.
That would be really helpful. I would just be really curious. So I asked Kate to take these 4 bullet points and create a quick poll for us where you can kind of tell us where you feel like you're really strong. You can't have a tie. Which one of these is your strength? If you had to bet your business on it, are you the best operations person, or do you really feel like you're great at marketing, or are you the numbers nerd that really gets the finances of your business, or do you happen to be an ex-attorney that that really gets the IP side of this business, or maybe you've just launched a patent where you feel like the legal part of your business is just so tight. And Kate, I can't necessarily see the results for that, but I can't wait to see what our participants say in terms of their strengths and just what they feel like are really their weaknesses. What are you seeing?
So far, we've kind of got a tie-ish with operations and marketing. Operations being 35%, marketing being 40%, legal, administrative is 5%, financial 20%. But I'll update that at the end too. After people, there you go.
So this doesn't, I don't know about you guys, but this doesn't surprise me too much. Most gifted entrepreneurs start their process by finding a path to money, right? Can I create a machine that can find customers? And then can I maybe second to that, develop some of the operations infrastructure needed to deliver my products? And, the fact that even 20% would say that finance is a strength is really good, actually. Very few of us are going to say that the legal side of it is a strength. I think my point for having the poll and my point for bringing this up is kind of know yourself, know where you're strong, because as you go to evaluate your business, you can be honest. You may need to go ahead and outsource the stuff you're not good at. On the flip side, you may be very attractive to a particular buyer who, like for instance, let's say you're weak in the legal side. If you find a buyer that really understands IP stuff, you might be able to get a better multiple for your business. Okay, we're gonna pivot here a little bit and go on to our kind of third bullet point for the webinar. I just want to give you a quick crash course on appraisal. I'm going to make this short because this can get boring, but any business can be evaluated, and essentially there are three ways. These 3 bullet points are the 3 standard ways for trying to appraise a business. The market comparables, that's kind of like when you sell or buy real estate. They're gonna, the appraiser is gonna try to find like pieces of real estate that feel the same, that have the same neighborhood, that have the same quality, and they will try to determine your valuation based on those similar, even in this case, businesses. Obviously, you guys can right away see some holes in that from an e-commerce standpoint. It is very, very challenging to find exact comps in the world of Amazon sellers, in the world of e-commerce. There's so many variables. There are key employees, IP, your product category is going to be different than other categories. And so generally speaking, option number 1, market comps, is not a great way to value your business. Asset liquidation is similar. This is literally, if you think about like a construction firm, a lot of times a construction firm will be valued at its asset liquidation, which is, I own $1 million worth of trucks and trailers and tools and equipment, and I have $500,000 or $500,000 in debt. That leaves me the other $500,000 that is my asset value. And then you have to try to determine an arbitrary, I feel like it's kind of arbitrary value for what they call goodwill, which is, how much is my brand worth? How much is the intangible aspect of this business worth? And again, I've never had a buyer and seller that have agreed on what that intangible value should be. And as a result of that, most of the time we lean on this third option, which is kind of the free cash flow. You guys have maybe often heard about, I'm hoping to get 3x or 4x for my business. What that seller is talking about is a multiple of the profitability. And we'll dive into exactly how to do that model here in a minute. But let me take a quick side note here. If you are ever interested in selling your business, it is critically important that you pause for a second and try to understand the psychology of the buyer. Try to put yourself in his or her shoes. And here's what I mean by that. There are going to be many risk factors or pluses, they don't have to be a minus, plus or minus in a business that make me really, really excited to invest in it. I'm going to love if they have a diverse set of SKUs, if those SKUs are kind of coherent around a brand idea. I'm going to love it if not 95% of the revenue comes from one specific SKU. I'm going to love it if there's a track record of profitability, if the margins on the products are strong. I'm going to love it if the advertising is efficient, right? You guys get this, right? You're going to love it if there aren't any TOS violations, that kind of thing. On the flip side of it, if you're a buyer, if you're an investor, there are so many Amazon businesses on the market right now that I'm not going to pay top dollar for a business that has increased risk factors, which would basically be the opposite of what I just said. You only sell 3 weeks out of the year. You have a very narrow SKU set. You have a kind of a discombobulated brand where you don't really understand your customer. You don't have a track record. You have terrible books. These kind of factors, you're not compliant in some really important way, but those kind of factors are going to make the psychology of an investor be squeamish. And basically, when an investor doesn't feel great, when they don't have warm and fuzzy feelings about your business, they're not going to pay top dollar for it. And so just understand that sometimes I think people can make business valuation kind of a black box, when the reality is it's a set of data that someone is analyzing, meaning if you have great books and great access to your reports, you can help the data side, but it's also just an emotional trust decision. How trustworthy is this person who's selling this business to me? And has it kept me up at night 3 times in a row thinking that this might be a sham or this might be too good to be true? The reason I'm saying this is if you can put yourself in that person's shoes, it makes it a lot easier for you to really pick the right projects to lower the risk profile for your business. And we'll talk about some specific ways to do that in a minute. But what you want to do is make your business as clean, as easy to run, and have as much cash flow as possible. And so that's how the psychology works. Literally, they're looking for cash flow, they're looking for ease of use, and they're looking to make sure they don't lose their rears when they put money into your business. Okay, here it is. This literally is a very standard, I guess you say, formula for valuing an e-commerce business. And here it is. Your value equals SDE, which is seller's discretionary earnings, times some multiple of years. You might, if it's a 3x multiple, then you're getting your profit times 3 years, plus good inventory. And I'm going to unpack each of these really quickly. Here's just kind of a P&L I threw together, changed some numbers to protect the innocent. And I conveniently didn't do a full 12 months because that would be too much data on the screen. But here's 4 months of data from a Amazon seller. And if you look down this P&L, what you'll see is these are the key bullet points that are important for determining what your seller's discretionary earnings, like what's your profitability. I've talked to a lot of sellers. Some of them are good friends of mine who also have a consulting business on the side. Well, you're going to pull that revenue out of your P&L to determine what your seller's discretionary earnings are. Likewise, if you have a lot of travel expenses or you pay a lot of legal fees, you're going to get to pull those expenses off of your P&L so that you can create a seller's discretionary earnings report that basically just tells the story for this brand that you're looking to sell. So, the key items are sales, discounts, which could be rebates or promotions, your returns, any reimbursements you get from FBA, and then your cost of goods sold and all the things that kind of filter into cost of goods sold. Not, your product purchases, your commissions, your FBA fees, any shipping costs getting your products into FBA, and basically what you're going to pull from that gross profit number is it ends up being mostly your advertising. So how much in advertising spend is it costing your business to generate these sales? And then you're going to have the opportunity to put any other relevant expenses. Here's a good example. If you have a subcontractor who will likely go with the business, this is kind of a key employee that actually manages the customer service for this account. It's likely that the buyer will want that person to come with them, and then therefore that expense should be included in your SDE calculation. On the flip side, normally as an owner, whatever you pay yourself as a salary, you're going to pull out of your P&L to simplify it so that you're just going to have kind of this stripped down P&L that you can see on the screen right here. So in this super simplified example, the average monthly profit is conveniently exactly $5,000. I cooked the books a little bit so we can have easy numbers here, but average monthly SD is $5,000, which means if I'm going to annualize that, it's $60,000 a year that this business generates in, you could say, like free cash flow that then the seller can decide what to do with it. That's why they call it discretionary earnings. So continuing this same example, what kind of multiple is my business going to get? And this chart here does not represent some, hard, fast rule on this. This is just what I'm kind of seeing. And as I talk to the brokers that are friends of mine in the industry, it basically breaks down like this. If you're a retailer, especially if you're, kind of an old school arbitrage seller, you might be able to generate some strong profitability, but you're only going to get maybe 1.5 times your annual profits or your annual SDE as a valuation. So in our simplified example, your business is worth $60,000 to $90,000. If you're a retailer that has some contract exclusivity, you either have maybe you have some producers that are tied up where they're only sending you, they're not sending your product to 28 other sellers, or maybe you have a contract with the brand where you're the only one selling this brand on Amazon. Well, then you can get a higher multiple, 2.5 times. If you've got some really tight contracts, you may be able to get closer to what you're seeing with the brand owner. So look, if you look at it as a brand owner, which is what I suspect a lot of you guys are wanting to be, you have some kind of intellectual property. You have a trademark on your logo and your brand, and better yet, you've taken some concrete steps towards locking down a patent for your product or your product set. That's where we're really seeing the market at 2.5. I've even seen some listed at 4 times EBITDA or SDE in this situation. And so what I want to point out to you guys is the difference between being a reseller, even with some exclusive access, or, by the way, if you're a white label seller and you've never gone through a trademark process or a patent process, you're essentially a reseller that just has exclusive access to your product. And so just know that you don't have a lot that's protectable yet. But if you see the difference between this kind of second row that I have here and the third row, man, that's a major difference in the value, going from 120,000 to 150,000 as being the first range to maybe 150, 200. The reason I mention this again is that $5,000 to $10,000 you spend on getting your IP locked down is very much so worth it if you're looking to sell your brand, because without that, most buyers aren't going to pay top dollar for it. I also wanted to mention that there are some really large brands out there that can command a much higher multiple, and it's because they've done the hard work of acquiring their customers off of Amazon. For instance, I was talking to some friends of mine at Vermont Teddy Bear a few weeks ago, and those guys have done an unbelievable job of setting up their brand, of driving their audience both on and off of Amazon. They have a sophisticated logistics operation that I've never seen anywhere else. Their ability to develop products is literally as good as I've seen it. And as a result, oh, by the way, and they're a strong 8-figure seller. As a result, if they were ever looking to sell, which I don't think they are, but if they were, they could command an extremely high multiple, an extremely high valuation on their business. Likewise, I met a guy recently that sells cosmetics. He's got 20 million almost Instagram followers. He has the ability to launch new products on and off of Amazon much more efficiently than most sellers do. He can command a much higher multiple. But for the rest of us, just know that we're going to be in that 2.5 to maybe 4x for brands, unless you can drive major traffic off of Amazon. Okay, and then the last thing here is don't forget to add in good inventory. And what I mean by good inventory is if you've had a set of SKUs sitting in FBA for, 8 or 9 months and they're not selling, a buyer's not going to pay you for those SKUs. That's probably inventory that you need to liquidate, and you're not going to get credit for it. But if you've just purchased a strong run of your best-selling products and it's just arriving at FBA, and let's say that you spent a total of $50,000 to get them, stateside and then get them into a fulfillment center, you can a lot of times add that $50,000 cost to your multiple. The one caveat I would say here is if your total business is only worth about $100,000, you're not going to be able to add a $50,000 addition for inventory. It needs to be, a little bit of a smaller percentage of your total value. But don't forget about inventory, because there is some cash tied up in that inventory that you can actually get back out of the business. So back to the formula here. You could use this today, pull up a spreadsheet, but maybe even pull up your P&L from QuickBooks or Xero or whatever you're using. Pull out your salary, pull out your legal expenses and your other expenses that aren't attributable to this Amazon brand or to the brand you're looking to sell. multiply that by a multiple, again, based on where you are as a business model, and then add any good inventory that you are already sitting on. And that's going to give you a ballpark valuation for your business. So that's kind of that. Use that, understand, understand where your business is. And here's why you want to understand where it is, because knowing where you are as a business and then comparing that to your goals, which we talked about a few minutes ago, is the best way to determine what your next action step is this week, this month, this year. And so here's what I've done. Kind of final bullet point here. What do you do about it? One case study, I want to exit. I want to exit in a year and I want to get top multiple for it. Where should I start? How can I add value to my brand? I would kind of view this list that's in front of you on the slide as kind of a progressive list. If you own a brand and haven't done a trademark yet, you should stop everything today and start that trademark process. The amount of marginal value that having a trademark or a patent adds to your brand is unbelievably high. And most buyers won't invest in your business if you don't have that IP locked down. So start with IP. Second, improve your accounting. If you don't have great visibility into your numbers, if you can't pretty quickly, give me or somebody else a picture of where your money's going, where it's coming from, how you're making your money, then it's time to invest in your accounting. And it may be, again, I'm looking at the updated poll here, 23% of us said that the financial part of this business is a strength for us. That's great. Oh, it looks like we finally got the slides to work on Kate's side here. So they're popping up. You guys get another quick view here.
Yep. Sorry. This is just a quick review.
No worries.
But
so
I wanted to just get to that last slide again.
Yeah, no, not a problem at all. So, 3/4 of us are not financial people. That might be something you want to invest in outsourcing in. Most of us feel pretty good about operations and marketing. Those are kind of the strengths for our population here on this webinar. Great. That may not be the first thing you want to outsource. Kate, can we go ahead? Oh, actually, I can do it. I'm sorry. I've got the slide here.
Yes, you can. You're good.
Awesome. Okay, here we go. No one, literally, somebody must have changed their answer because nobody has said that legal is their strength. so we don't have any closet attorneys here on the call, so that's nice. But again, that's why IP is at the top of the list, because a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we wait way too long to invest in the legal part of our business. But improve your accounting. If your accounting's decent, you've got the IP knocked out. Create a scorecard. If any of you guys are sports fans, I'm a huge sports fan. Football season is upon us, and it is no fun watching a football game unless you understand what the score is, how much time is left on the clock. That book that I recommended early on called The 4 Disciplines of Execution has an unbelievably practical guide. It would kind of baked into the book for how to generate a scorecard. I would say this was the biggest change in my former business, was when I could finally get the numbers that mattered in front of not just me, but in front of my employees, where they could then see how they were measuring up. How are we doing as a team? So if you don't have a scorecard, make a scorecard. Start thinking about the things that are not worth your time as a CEO. If you put that operations is your strength, super. You might want to outsource accounting. You might want to outsource the legal. Obviously, we have to do that if we're not attorneys. The flip side of it is, if you don't like the marketing, there are people out there that will do the PPC for you. Don't be afraid to outsource those secondary tasks. There are companies out there. A shout out to some friends of mine. They run a company called Data Automation, also here in Athens, Georgia, where literally if you spend 5 hours a day copy and pasting your orders from one system to another, they can build you an integration where that task will happen automatically. We mentioned CEO roundtables in at least one of the podcast, but guys, I can't say highly enough how much this helps to find a peer group, a group of guys and gals that get what you're going through as an entrepreneur, that understand not just what the latest Amazon hack is, but how to actually scale your business, how to implement traction. You can read the book, but how in the world do I implement this? Highly recommend that. There are so many sellers that struggle with how to launch products that I actually put it as a bullet point here. If you don't have a clear plan, and by the way, this could be on one page. What is your plan for launching a product? And if it wins, keeping it. If it stinks, killing it. If you don't have that strategy, that would be a great way to improve your portfolio of products and ultimately increase the value of your brand. If you're not, if you've done those things, it's time to document some processes. Let's get out the old SOP hat and make sure that we can make key parts of our business absolutely idiot proof. How long would it take us to train someone to take our job? Document the process that lets you do that. And I know, launching a new channel, I put this at the bottom for a reason. If you don't have these other things, not that everyone's going to join a CEO roundtable group, but if you don't have careful plans for each of these other bullet points, I don't know that I would launch a new channel. And frankly, I have a lot of sellers that come to me and they want to sell in a year or maybe 24 months. And I tell them, I wouldn't spend the money on a new channel. You're unlikely to get the ROI in 24 months dumping a bunch of cash into a new channel unless you happen to already be really good at that channel. Like if you've just hired a key employee that really gets Amazon EU, perfect. Launch Amazon EU because you have a competitive advantage there. For the rest of us, if you're not looking to be in this business for another 2 to 3, maybe 4 years, I would just be slow to make those investments. Or let me say this, I would at least tighten down these other things first. So I hope that's helpful. Basically coming in for a landing here, about to have some time for questions. Just wanted to say again, we're going to email out a copy of this book, Solving the Cash Flow Crisis, to everyone who's registered today. I've also just want to give you my email, my calendar link. I know it's a little bit, we'll email that out also, by the way, but I would love to make myself available to have just kind of a 15-minute check-in. If anyone has questions that we don't cover here in a minute in the Q&A, would love to be available to help answer those questions and really look specifically at your situation. My promise to you is we say no to as many customers as we say yes to. So we'll shoot you straight if you're a good fit for Seller Accountant. You may not be, and that's okay too. So that's kind of the coming in for a landing here, Kate, and I'm ready to do some Q&A.
Awesome. So we'll just leave. Okay, so we've got questions. I just want to go over our poll really quick. I did end it. So our final poll, operations, 38% of you said that's your biggest strength, marketing, 35%, financial, 23%, and legal administrative, 0%. I'm going to give the Keyword Podcast just a little bit of a shout out here. I have a legal expert that I have spent hours and hours and hours talking with all sorts of legal issues, everything from counterfeits to IP infringement, all sorts of, I've just picked her brain like crazy. All those episodes are coming in September. So watch out for those. Watch out for those. Like it's a TV, it's a radio. Listen for those. Those will be available soon on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, wherever you're listening to the podcast. So now, that being said, we are going to go ahead and jump into our Q&A. We are recording this. We'll send it out later. So if you've missed any part of it, you can see that. And I am going to go kind of from the beginning, the earliest questions that we got. Oksana, she asked at the very beginning, what percentage ACOS is good?
So I can just tell you generalities here. I mean, I'm not necessarily a marketing expert, but when you're launching a new brand product, I've seen lots of really successful sellers be happy with a 30, even 40% ACOS in the short run. The number that I would be much more interested in if I were this seller is, what is my total advertising expense as a percentage of my sales? So ACOS gives you a clear, advertising spend versus attributable sales dollars. But with Amazon, a lot of times you're building momentum, you're increasing your organic search volume so that it is driving other sales that are not, you're not having advertised for. And so I think a great goal, not everyone can reach this if your category is really crowded and competitive, but if you can aim for 20% ACOS after a few months of launching a new product, and if you can then aim for 10%, which is kind of more of a total ad spend, what is your total return on ads? That would be outstanding if you can get ACOS at 20 and total ad spend at 10%.
Sorry, I started talking but didn't turn my mic back on. Our next question is from Ty. What's the most common reason someone would want to sell their Amazon business? And just a quick, if you didn't listen to our episode from last week, we talked with a seller who builds Amazon businesses to sell. She just gives a really interesting perspective from a seller perspective there. So go back and listen to it. It's episode 82. But I'll give it to you, Tyler. What is the most common reason someone would sell their business?
Yeah, I mean, it's very personal for entrepreneurs. Let me just say this. The reason that we should think about it and at least have the discussion is every industry and every business has a life cycle. There is a curve. And I have talked to way more entrepreneurs who wish they had sold earlier than they did. I have talked to very few that felt like they sold too early. Now, that doesn't mean you ever have to sell. I mean, there are people who build a business, generate a bunch of income on that business, and either pass it on to their children or just kind of let it right off into the sunset and close the business down at the end. That's fine if that's your goal. That may be, that may be a reason for you to want to invest in automation and really make this thing streamlined. A lot of entrepreneurs, though, are looking to build an investment and at some point exit that investment. If you work for a corporation, they might have a matching for your 401k, but a lot of times for an entrepreneur, like our retirement is this business that we've built. And so at a bare minimum, a lot of times they're looking to sell towards the end of their career, but there are lots of investment-minded sellers out there that want to have a 3 to 5 year plan, build a brand, build some equity in that brand, find a niche in their particular competitive marketplace, and then exit while the getting's good. And I would say that's pretty common, although there may be lots of other reasons for selling.
All right, our next question comes from Lucas. What's a good time frame to start preparing an e-commerce business before putting it up for sale?
Yeah, I talked to a broker pretty recently who says that he is seeing the timeline kind of average about 36 months right now. I don't know if that's a good minimum or not, but I've seen that in a couple of different arenas where you have a 3 to 5 year, maybe I'll say 3 to 5 years. You have a 3 to 5 year business plan and you have a target revenue, a target profitability, and therefore a target value for your business over that 3 to 5 years. And then, honestly, the direct answer to your question is right now. Like the best time to start preparing for an exit is when you first start the business. Just have the hard conversation. What do I want this end game to look like? Even if your answer at that time is, I want to scale this thing indefinitely, which if I'm totally honest with you, that was my answer when we first started Care to Continue. I really thought that we were going to be $100 million franchise of home healthcare agencies all over the nation. And as we matured as business owners, I realized, I don't really want to manage 500 franchisees. That's not the right business for me. And so we pivoted our vision as we became more mature, and there's nothing wrong with that. What I would say is just start thinking about it now and reassess it every year. Your values change, your life stage changes. The wrong answer is to not think about it. Almost everything else is a good way to view it.
And I have a question. What should you be looking for in a broker?
That's a good question. Be aware that brokers are salespeople, just like your favorite real estate agents. I would say view it exactly like you view real estate. I want to have somebody that I believe is going to be a coach first, that is going to give me good advice. Here's a small example of this. It's really easy for a broker to sell you on the idea of selling your business by saying, we're going to put it on the market. You're going to get 7x your profitability. This is $1 million business, just so that you will sign an exclusive for 6 months. And what they know is that 3 months in, you'll drop your price because you actually want to move it, and then they'll still get the commission. And so I think just be aware of the fact that there's two sides to it. Brokers have more insight into where the market is than any accountant has, than anybody else in the industry, because they see these deals every day. At the same time, you really want to hire someone that you trust, that has the ability to at least convince you that they can be objective and help you get where you want to get.
All right. Next question comes from Keith. When you sell an Amazon business, does the buyer get your seller account and LLC, or do they need their own seller account and LLC? This is a really, really good one. Thanks, Keith.
Yeah, Keith, great question. And the answer is it depends. So there are two models. There's an equity sale where you're literally selling the equity stock in your LLC. And so everything that goes under that LLC, every bank account, every Seller Central account, every IP, that's owned by the LLC, will go with it. There are some pros and cons to structuring your sale that way. And then what's honestly becoming a little bit more common is an asset sale. And what I mean by that is you're just going to sell the listings. You're going to sell your know-how. You're going to sell your intellectual property. And you're not actually selling the LLC. You might just be selling everything that's under that LLC to the other guy's LLC. And so this can get really technical quickly, so I won't go too much more into it than that. But let's say, for instance, that you own an LLC that has a business and you have never registered for sales tax in any state, and you sell that LLC to your buyer, and they didn't do due diligence properly to know that you have some exposure. The states can really still kind of come after that LLC. On the flip side, if you just sell some listings to the new buyer and they already have sales tax set up for their other brands, they're going to enjoy having a little bit of a lower risk profile because they aren't picking up quite as many of your liabilities along with your company. However, they may not be able to get the reviews and credibility that are tied into your Seller Central account. It just really depends on how you structure it. There's kind of a continuum. You're either 100% selling the stock, you're just selling the assets, and there's kind of everything in between. I've kind of seen deals all over the map.
Okay, our next question is from Chris. How long does it take to sell the business once it hits the market? And also, what will I need to show the buyer? So 2 parts there. How long does it take? What do you need to share? And he also asked, what's a good rule of thumb for value and pricing? If you want to go back to your formula that you have up on the slide, so you can reference that as well. Just a quick review.
Yeah, Chris, great questions. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Yeah, it just depends. Think about it again like you think about real estate. If you have a unbelievable house in the best neighborhood of town that is selling at a great price, it's going to be snatched up immediately. And right now there's a pretty hot market for Amazon businesses. From start to finish, best case scenario is going to be a few months, more normally probably 6 months, in terms of going through the listing process, getting it online, fielding deals, signing, kind of a letter of intent, and then going into due diligence, where which kind of leads to your second question, Chris. What will I need to show the buyer? So normally you get to set up a prospectus in advance, which is you giving kind of broad information about your business. What's the profitability? How many years have you been in business? How many SKUs do you have? How much time does it take you? Kind of what's your story? And your broker will help you put that together. And you'll put that prospectus online, and any buyer in the world could sign the non-disclosure agreement that broker has and gain access to your prospectus. If they're interested, if they think you look cool, what they might do is submit kind of an interest proposal, and they may actually submit an offer. And that's when you'll go into more of a formal due diligence, where they're going to want access. For me, when we do due diligence, because that's one of the services that we sell at Seller Accountant, is investment groups hire us to help them vet whether a deal is a good deal or not. And man, I would love to be able to follow the money. I want to have access to Seller Central. I want to see those dollars flow through the sales reports. I want to see them flow into a legitimate accounting system. And then I want to see enough bank statements to be able to tell that money is not being siphoned off. And so kind of think about it that way. If you had to try to audit this, you may want to start building your audit trail that way. I will say this, just kind of a parenthesis here. We have helped a few sellers who have needed to sell just one of their brands. They've got a portfolio and they want to try to tease out one of them. And it is possible, it's hard to do it on your own, but it's possible to hire a firm like Seller Accountant to build you a custom P&L just for one of your brands and put some source documents, some reports that kind of prove that those sales are good. That can allow you to just sell one brand instead of having to sell, your entire portfolio. So those are the kinds of things you're going to need to show your buyer. And then again, your third question, Chris, was what's a good rule of thumb for value or pricing your business? I think the valuation model that I showed you guys on the slide, your value is going to equal your seller's discretionary earnings. That's different than net income. You're adding back in your seller salary. By the way, you can Google seller's discretionary earnings, or there's a blog post on selleraccountant.com where we kind of dive into it a little bit. But understand what real cash is being generated by your business, multiply it times a multiple, and then if you have any good inventory added to it. So that's that. Okay, Kate.
All right, so we've got a bunch of stuff about brokers popping in right now, so I'm going to jump into those. So if you asked questions earlier in the webinar, I still have those. Don't think I forgot about you. But commissions, when it comes for a broker, who pays the commissions, a buyer or seller? We talked about what to look for in a broker. What about using no broker? Is there a way that you can sell without a broker? And if so, how can either sellers or buyers find those? Yeah. And let's see. This is maybe a little far-fetched, but is there a website similar to Zillow where people can list their businesses or their brands that are for sale?
Yeah, really, all of these are good questions. To answer that last one first, I don't know of any websites currently. There may be some that are not basically brokerages. I mean, all of your good brokerages, I think there's, you guys have heard the podcast, Empire Flippers or Website Closers. Those guys are really big. Quiet Light brokerage. Those guys, I've heard really good things about them from an integrity standpoint. I get to meet the owners next week. There are Latona's is another one. So there's a number of brokers that are out there. Each of those brokers adds value to the transaction in the following ways. So the answer to the question about can you sell by owner? Absolutely, you can. If you have the ability to source a buyer, if you have the ability to negotiate the deal, get it through due diligence, and then just hire your own attorney to kind of draw up the contract at the end. I did not use a broker when I sold my business this past year because I was just selling it back to my business partner. And so it didn't make sense for us to pay a commission on a broker, which I think that might have been the first question. Commissions, I've seen them from 10 to 20%. Most of them are 15%. And the seller should expect to pay that commission. So if you are fortunate enough to have a brand valued at $1 million, you get an offer that closes at $1 million, literally $150,000 of that sometimes can go to the broker. A lot of times for a bigger sale, the broker will give you a discount, maybe 5%, 10%. I would just look at each broker. They each have different pricing models. But essentially, the broker can take all of this headache away from you. They have the websites, the podcast, the marketing engines to get lots and lots and lots of buyers in front of you. They can field multiple offers really, really quickly. They can help you come up with the best offer. They can help you walk through the negotiation, walk through the due diligence, and then they can literally provide the legal help to help you close. And so a lot of times that's all baked into their commission. And even for a 10% commission, I don't know. I would be tempted to say unless you know someone. I mean, for by all means, if you know someone that's interested in your business, walk down that road before you spend $100,000 on a commission. But most sellers will get more just getting their business on a good brokerage and kind of trusting the process. Did I answer all of those questions, Kate?
Yes. We have a question from Ravonda about how does Amazon transfer the sold account? And then she's also asking about social media accounts, if that impacts the multiple. And transferring that. I just want to briefly talk about the social media and answer that, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Tyler. So one of the things with social media, with email, for example, she uses the example of if you have a YouTube account created on your own under your own Gmail account. In many cases, there's so much information that is in your Gmail account that it's a lot easier to just sell that account, that email account, along with everything rather than just creating a new account. So you can transfer, for example, like a Facebook page, Instagram, you should be able to transfer over login information. But oftentimes when things are connected in your email, you will likely lose that email account. So when we talk about preparing to sell from day one of the things that you can and should be doing is making sure that those accounts are all set up with an email address that you're okay with losing. Now, that being said, you might not be too happy to lose an email account that you've had for years. But if someone is paying a couple $1 million because you're selling a company to them, you might say, it's fine. I don't need that email account anyways. So that's one. But I am curious, if you have a large social media following and you are selling your brand, you're selling the business, does that audience that you have on social media impact the valuation? How should it impact it? And then also, how does Amazon transfer the accounts to the new owner?
Yeah, so I thought your points were really good there, Kate. Definitely, in the same sense that you want to have a separate bank account, go ahead and start splitting your social media early if it's possible. With something like a Facebook page, if I'm not mistaken, switching the admin is pretty easy to do. Twitter and YouTube are a little bit more challenging, right? So a lot of your equity is probably built into the profile itself. And so I would definitely recommend kind of splitting that pretty early on. And in terms of how it might impact the value of your business, again, if you're that large seller that has 1 million followers on Instagram and can really quickly launch new products, you're going to get a major bump. And even if it's 100,000 followers, that does add to your valuation. If you got a whole bunch of email addresses that can allow you to retarget products, email addresses that you've accumulated, legitimately, that for sure people will pay more for those email addresses. The problem is it's hard to kind of quantify them. I would just say that it is good to have multiple channels that can drive customers outside of Amazon. Everyone has the same fear about Amazon, right? That they're going to put you out of business, or that they can shut you down for a TOS or that kind of thing, a violation. And so if your time frame is several years out, investing in social media, gathering a following, developing a rapport with your customers, just like you would if you were a local brick and mortar shop, will pay dividends when you come to sell your business. They will make your business attractive to a different kind of buyer, a buyer that really wants a multi-channel experience. And I didn't talk about this a lot on the valuation page, but let me see if I can just move forward a slide here. Let me go back one, sorry. For those larger brands, if you are selling anywhere near 10 million a year, if you're close to being an 8-figure brand, you should be investing. You should have a social media manager. You should be creating content that gives you an audience so that you can leverage Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube to drive future traffic, future sales. Because at that point, honestly, it adds tremendous value and can really give you those huge multiples if you decide to sell.
All right, this question's from Mark, and it is also impacts valuation. We're talking about reviews. So obviously, a high number of 5-star reviews are very important for your brand and your item's value. So how do the reviews on your item survive a sale and transfer to the buyer-seller account? Or does a buyer have to keep your seller central account going in addition to their current one?
So, there are probably a bunch of people on this call that know more about this than I do. But if I'm not mistaken, your seller feedback is 100% attached to your seller central account. And if your seller feedback is important in the sale, then your best option is to sell the entire account. because you don't, I don't think, have the ability to transfer those reviews. Products can be different. If you are the only owner of a listing, you have Brand Register 2.0 set up, and there are product level reviews. So this is not necessarily your Seller Central account, but the product itself. My understanding is that those reviews travel with the product because essentially you're selling that listing. Is that what you understand, Kate, to be true?
Yes, that is what. Mark, if you're still here, if you wouldn't mind letting us know if we missed something, if we need clarification on that at all, we're more than willing to provide it. Next question. Over the past year, 5 years, 10 years, this is from Hunter. Have the payouts for Amazon businesses gone up, down, stayed level? Also, what factors would influence either a good sale or a bad sale?
Yeah, good question, Hunter. I found it here in the feed. Thank you for your question. So to be totally transparent with you, I started this business a year ago, and so I'm having to kind of look in hindsight at the trends. Everything I'm seeing is that 10 years ago, the third-party marketplace on Amazon was a brand new thing still. They were still trying to beg people to enter that marketplace, and there weren't a whole lot of brokers that were focused on it. There weren't a whole lot of transactions, and as a result, just because the volume was low, the multiples were also a little bit squirrelier. They weren't as high. I think that we are seeing a trend where the valuations have gone up. And as more people are entering the marketplace, as more people have frankly made a lot of money on Amazon, and now that those businesses are maturing, as more people are actually putting them on the market, we're kind of for the first time seeing what a market view of this should be. And so I do think it's trended up. I think it'll probably continue to trend up with some reason. I mean, the problem is that the demand is for sure increasing, but the supply is also increasing. There are an increased number of sellers that are kind of putting their businesses on the market. And then what factors would influence a good sale versus a bad sale? I would say the easy answer to that is way back to the beginning of this webinar. What is your goal? If your goal is to have a clean exit, and you didn't want to have to spend any more time with your business, you wanted a clean, quick exit, then you know what? If you got a fair price, you had maybe a 30-day transition and you actually got a check, that is a great sale. If you're not where you want to be as a business and you're desperate and you're having to sell out of desperation, like I have a bad partnership and don't have a choice but to exit, or I am out of money and if I don't sell, I'm I'm kind of toast. In that scenario, selling it is still better than not selling it, but you're not going to be as satisfied with that sale because you haven't measured your goal and then aimed your sale towards that goal. So this kind of harkens back to know yourself, know what you want out of your business, and take steps now to get there so that you're not caught off guard and kind of forced into a corner.
And just wondering, what is your best suggestion for finding a broker?
Yeah, what my best suggestion is? I know this is going to feel like a cop out here because I know a bunch of them and I feel like I have a little bit of a conflict of interest trying to just recommend one, but honestly, find someone who has sold their business and talk to them about the experience. The flip side of it is there are really only a handful of them that are majoring. I saw a couple of them pop up on the message feed, but find a couple that tout their ability to sell e-commerce sites and have conversations with them and kind of look for the red flags maybe we talked about. Are they a little bit too salesy, or are they able to earn your trust? Are they able to give you some practical insights into how to improve the value of your business or not? If you walk through the process that we described here, you put a fair value on your business and you talk to a broker who tells you your business should be worth half of that or 10 times that, that feels like a bit of a red flag. I might want to keep shopping. Let me say this is too important. This is such an important decision that you would be crazy not to interview a few brokers, frankly. Don't sign anything until you interview them. Understand exactly how they work. Understand exactly how they're going to market your business. Better yet, if you have a year, start developing that relationship before you get right to the finish line. And if anyone wants to talk about it offline, I'd be glad to kind of give you my opinion. But the reality is there are different actual brokers within each brokerage, and the level of attention that you get is going to be important to you. And frankly, if your business is tighter and worth more, you're going to get more attention. And so know what you're getting into, understand how to be in control of your own destiny so that you're not at the mercy of someone else. And maybe that'd be my advice, is just interview some and try to find someone who's had a good experience.
Steve is looking to buy Amazon businesses. He's looking for sellers, and he's wondering if you have any suggestions on finding them.
Well, Steve, great question. Thank you for asking. You've maybe come to the right place here, right? I hope you can connect. By the way, I will say this: if anybody wants to email me for Steve's contact, it looks like I maybe have a potential buyer here. I'd be glad to connect you guys. That's free of charge, no broker charge there. But kind of goes back to what we said earlier. If you're able to solve if Steve's able to solve all the problems and has the ability to attract a seller who wants to kind of unload, is ready to unload this thing, then you should definitely start that conversation. And I don't think you should hesitate to do it without a broker. When you start running into brick walls, when you start realizing that you're not able to handle either the legal side of it or the negotiation or due diligence, these are big transactions. It's not something you want to mess around with. So the answer to Steve's question is I don't have a list on me right here, Steve, but anyone who wants to connect with Steve, shoot me an email. Just put Steve in the subject line or in the email body, and Steve, I'll have your email in just the webinar back end, and I'll forward the people to you and make the introduction.
And we have a question from Ravonda. Any negotiating tips that you can give about dealing with sellers that can make it sell for a higher price? Again, this is if you have a good broker, that can be very helpful. And then there's some things you should keep to yourself until the very end of the transaction.
Yeah, so this is Ravonda talking about it from the perspective of she wants to sell her business. Is that right, Kate?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So I would just say objective. By the way, before you go into negotiation, there's a classic book out there called Getting to Yes. The last name is Ursy, Ursy, Ursy maybe. I don't know exactly how you say it. I think the guy's a Harvard professor that has negotiated. He helped negotiate, I think, the Bosnia deal 20 years ago or something like that. Here's the key. Understand your position, understand your numbers, be thoughtful enough to understand what their objections are going to be thoughtful enough to already answer those objections in your own mind, and then try to ask questions to understand where the other guy's coming from or where the other gal's coming from. What are his or her interests? What are the things that would stress them out as a seller? And if you can find any way as a negotiator to get on the same side of the table, hey, here's a problem. We want to make this deal work. And we both have aligned interest there. We want this deal to work. We want it to be smooth. How can I address as many of your needs, give you as many wins as possible without giving up my position, which is my business is worth a certain amount, and I am really willing to work hard with you. If it means I need to stay on a few months, great. If it means I need to have you hold back 10% so I can prove it's worth it, great. But understand what you're willing to give up and what you're not. And I would say that's kind of what Kate was saying. If you know that timeline doesn't really matter to you, you're in a powerful position because you can kind of use that as a consolation. You can say, hey, I'm willing to stick around. So that would be my advice. The Getting to Yes is a book I'd consider if you're really concerned about the negotiation process, and try to remove the emotions. Never, never, never feel like you need to be pressured to say yes in a conversation. It is totally acceptable to say, wow, I really need to think about that. I need to process that. That's an interesting idea. Literally find a spouse or a pet and say, hey, I need to go talk to my business partner, Rufus, right? I need to go bounce this off of him because I'm not really sure about that. That concerns me, but maybe that's a great idea. And never feel like you need to say yes in a meeting. I've done this before in the past, and I got burned. I was in a negotiation where I really thought that the attorney was representing both sides of it. And it turns out I was just being naive. The attorney was really representing the other party. And I felt pressure to say yes. And it would have been very wise for me to say, let me kind of chew on that a little bit. So maybe that's the biggest piece of advice I could give you is be thorough, have somebody objective in your life, someone like me that understands the numbers, or a friend that can kind of give you a reality check if you're being unreasonable. But don't be afraid to take time to process.
Awesome. Hunter is going to have our last word, our last question. Would you continue to raise debt capital to fund growth endlessly? I'm in this situation, paying 10% on debt to fund earning 25% net on products, 15% after debt costs. And he's wondering how long he can run this way before either debt capital increases in cost or sales decrease to a point where I could be suffering. So I'm just wondering if it's normal to fund through debt on top of organic profit reinvestment. You should listen to our second episode we did with Tyler on managing profitability. And Tyler, I'll let you address anything else there too.
Yeah, so definitely listen to the podcast. Hunter, this is a great question. A few notes in the Solving the Cash Flow Crisis book that we'll send to you. But if you are really netting 15%, in other words, you had a 25% net profit, you pay 10% as basically your cost of capital, and you're netting 15%, you should be able to slowly build your war chest, which is your amount of cash that is building so that you are able to deleverage your business. So as businesses grow, the risk of having a bunch of debt on your books also continues to grow. And guys, interest rates are already starting to creep up. I would be really concerned if I had a revolving line of credit right now that was sitting at, 4 or 5%, because I think in the next 24 months, we'll likely see those interest rates continue to go up. And so I would not necessarily recommend debt funding in perpetuity. I would say, debt fund, but nothing wrong with debt funding. I was a banker for 5 years. Debt fund, if you can get a lower cost of capital than you can get on returns, but then be intelligent enough to pay off the debt and set aside your war chest so that when things either get worse in the economy, you're still good to go, or you can eventually, because here's the other part of this, is if you end up looking to sell this business down the line, your debt's coming off of your bottom line, right? if your business was going to be worth $1 million, but you have $300,000 in debt, well, now your business is only worth $750,000 or $700,000. So just manage your debt. That's all I would say. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you. Giving you a round of applause. Yay. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar. Great stuff. If you have questions for Tyler, you can reach out to him at tyler@saleraccountant.com. It's still there on your screen. We'll also be sending you his book, Solving the Cash Flow Crisis. If you have any other questions, you can email me, Kate, at AmazonInsiderPodcast.com. And yeah, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you taking the time to sit and listen and engage. And if you missed any part of this, we'll be sending it out later this week. Thank you.